Again, thank you for having me here today. I think there's two things that your viewers should be watching. First is the U.S. consumer this summer, which is going to be critical for the global economy. And the second thing, to your point, is the helicopter money that we anticipate coming into the system. Keep in mind, to your point, they've thrown everything short of the...
Who's going to undertake it? Who's going to undertake it? Is it going to be the Fed? Is it going to be the Bank of Japan? Is it going to be the ECB?
I think right now what everyone is going to be looking towards is the U.S. economy to actually make the first move in terms of this fiscal measure. We're coming into a political cycle where tax cuts, infrastructure, all of these measures in this political season, especially given the news today, are going to be very easy and very palatable for U.S. voters to accept.
Okay. There is no guarantee, this is not a silver bullet, and there is no guarantee it's going to get us to inflation target, is it? What are the demerits here? Because my fear is that it's going to be counterproductive.
I don't know if it's counterproductive as much as long-term we all have to be concerned about the economic consequences of it. But the reality is the thing you can't stop is a politician from a printing press. And right now it has shifted. All global central banks have effectively said, we're done. We've now seen this move last time relative to when we spoke, what the markets have shown us relative to a weaker dollar and the consequences, but they will and have to give consumers, to your point, cash to spend in this economy. So helicopter money, I don't see it as much of a risk short-term as much as a very required necessity.
Let's talk about the here and now. June rate hike. Both Lockhart and Williams are saying that it's appropriate. But is it really, considering the balance of risks? And remember, it coincides with the Brexit vote. The Fed are increasingly looking at the international balance of risks as well. I think they're going to stay cautious. What's your call
I would agree with you. When you and I last spoke last year, October, November, we were looking at China slowing down in a 25 basis point rate hike. And we both said here we saw the unnecessary need for that rate hike. And what were the consequences? Emerging market crisis, China potentially devaluing, Asian debt crisis, and a full-on run in commodities where there was no bid at all for oil or gold. Now fast forward to now, and again, the only thing that's changed relative to the screens that your viewers are now seeing, we had a stronger dollar last year. So the global central banks have said, by default, short of the impact to Japanese exporters, we now want a weaker dollar. And the consequences of that we've seen. Look at the impact to emerging markets. China is no longer perceived as a problem. And you and I don't have to look any further than the CRB index relative to the dollar to say there's now a bid in commodities, which we need.
US election cycle, big risk. I don't think that the markets have fully got a handle on this. Cruz is out. Trump has more or less nailed the Republican nomination. Let me just stress test this worst-case scenario, depending on your political viewpoint. Trump presidency, that's going to be disastrous for trade, foreign relations, and invariably for Wall Street, isn't it? Or, if he is in office, is he going to cool down the rhetoric?
Now, again, please keep in mind, I am a registered Republican in the state of California, so I want to be careful that we don't have a political...
Full disclosure. Thank you for that, Brian.
Thank you. That said, the irony of this is that if you and I are of the position that economically we need inflation in the system in order to boost equity returns. Remember, inflation is a component to equity returns. I could make the argument that right now a certain level of irresponsibility or openness in regarding to economic measures might actually be tolerated. Again, keep in mind, there's still the aspect of a brokered convention, and ironically, I was talking to a constitutional lawyer. People are actually talking about the Electoral College now in terms of being an impediment to his candidacy.
And he hasn't won the minimum number of delegates yet.
Correct.
I mean, John Kasich, he hasn't bowed out. Does he present a stumbling block, potentially, for Trump?
He does. I think Cruz right now is using this as a negotiation ploy going into the convention for his delegates, so it's far from over.